Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Amantu billahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. First of all, thank you, sir. And your presence means a lot to us because energy is one sector where Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has a lot of natural endowment, especially in alternate energy, where we're blessed with tidal resources, we're blessed with a lot of sunshine, and we are also exploring other alternate means through which we can have sustainable green energy. Uh, we have always been saying that Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is a place where if investment in in energy can flow, it can actually turn around not just the per capita income, but also since we have a lot of natural endowment, so इसकी वजह से हमारा the province is blessed with a lot of natural endowment, and we want to leverage that. We are fortunate that we have the leadership which understand and is cognizant of the fact that this resource potential could be tapped, which can turn around the economy of the province, also per capita GDP, and also can have a great influence in the GDP of our country. We are also, as an investment attraction agency of the government of Pakhtunkhwa, are seeking investment, sustainable investment in green technology, especially idle solar. And I think we have been blessed with the human resource which understands the potential. Besides this, we also have the kind of natural resources like mines and minerals, which like silicon, for instance, which support local production of these equipment, and globally also because of I would say China, the tariff and also the cost of production for these electricity or energy needs are reducing, and the government is also looking at policy changes wherein this investment in this sector can be promoted. I would now request Dr. Vakar to give from SGPI to give his opening remarks. Dr. Vakar, Assalamu alaikum, and I would also request you to be a little louder.
Thank you, Hassan Saab, and very grateful to the chair for taking time out today. And I'm certainly delighted to be among all of you who are in Peshawar in person or joining virtually. And on behalf of STPI, I welcome all of you to this public-private dialogue on the potential of renewable energy and hydropower development in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. As our concept note for this meeting reveals, that the recent initiatives and policies in this area by the federal government and government of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa represent a significant step forward in Pakistan's ambition to support clean energy. CPEC and other clean and green investments are expected to play a critical role in this transition. The government is committed to the goal of making Pakistan a low-carbon, renewable energy-reliant economy by 2030. And reducing greenhouse gas emissions to combat climate change remains critical to this goal. Initiatives are also underway to explore how low-cost, low-carbon electricity to consumers will support this goal. This is possible not only through efforts of public sector, but also private sector and public-private partnerships in hydropower, solar, and other forms, which in turn could spur infrastructure growth, inclusive economic expansion, and job creation in both industry and services sectors. In our research, we have noted that to scale up renewable energy in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, there needs to be a comprehensive effort to ramp up current skills level in this sector, particularly building technical capacities to conceive, design, and execute projects. Encouraging renewable energy zoning could also help the province in attracting longer-term interest. Private sector participation may be invited in transmission and distribution subsectors, and we could facilitate a community-based engagement which can help rural electrification. STPI's mission and goal with government of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and in collaboration with the government is to provide evidence-based policy advice and capacity building for the promotion of renewable energy and related areas of sustainable development. We continue to advocate for certainty of fiscal policy to ensure investor interests in renewable energy sector, and really hope that this year's budget will also present an opportunity to position ourselves so that correct fiscal incentives are available for our investors in this area. This aspect is also crucial for our cooperation under CPEC and other mega energy projects, including transboundary projects in energy. Apart from certainty of fiscal policy, irregular reform is also required to rationalize the regulatory burden faced by the private sector in renewable energy. And we sincerely hope that all national and sub-national agencies will work together in this direction. We already understand the good achievements of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa BOI under the Pakistan Regulatory Modernization Initiative, PRMI, in this direction. I once again congratulate all who are part of this session and who have made it possible to bring us together today. So my special gratitude to Dr. Hina Aslam, Mr. Hassan Dawood, and Mr. Ahad Nazir and their teams who have helped plan this meeting. I look forward to rest of the proceedings and hope that dialogues such as these will be stepping stone for a more concrete entry point in the future. Thank you, Hassan Saab. It's over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Waqar. And indeed, what you've highlighted is part of the agenda of the government, not just diversifying our energy bucket, but also looking at ways and means through which we can support industrialization in our province and have perhaps through wheeling and other means generate. But I would not be doing justice with this topic, and I would request Mahdullah Khan Saab to as a keynote speaker and also as the chief guest of today's discussion to say some words on this, and your directions and vision would support us actually to look at how we formulate our next 6 months policy and direction.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dawood Saab, thank you very much for inviting me here. Dr. Hina, Dr. Waqar, Khyber, all of you. It's really a pleasure for me to be here because the topic that is under discussion today is very dear to my heart. Renewable energy is very dear to my heart. The concept of public-private partnership, I'm a great proponent of that, and I'll tell you why the reason, but then you'll have to bear with me for the next 15 minutes or so, if that's okay.
It will be our honor.
Thank you. So instead of giving a opening statement and then, so whatever my contribution is, I'll just make it here, and then if you allow, then I will participate a little and then leave it to you. So both topics are very close to my heart. Instead of saying something about the general narrative that is built around the hydropower sector, yes, we all know that it's environmental friendly, it's clean and green energy, and got over 100-year lifespan for each project, etc. I would really ask some like to give a different perspective to all this, and especially the fact that STPI is here, which is the leading think tank in Pakistan, and you've had some, done some very good, tremendous job on various topics. So a few topics I'm going to bring up, so maybe STPI could then subsequently work on those. For one, you know, hydropower is a key resource for KP. And we all know that the potential of KP and increased investments, and so I won't go into those aspects. But I'll tell you a few aspects that are generally not covered in our discussions, wherever they are, in policy formulation also. One is the hydropower sector in Pakistan has a framework spelled out for it under the Constitution of Pakistan. Now, if you look at the various articles of the Constitution of Pakistan dealing with hydropower and subsequently the laws flowing out of those constitutional provisions, I think is a key for sustainable and participatory development of this sector. Now, let me, Dr. Hina, point out what exactly do I mean. The Constitution looks at hydropower addresses development of hydropower in the public sector and hydropower in the private sector. Article 161, subclause 2 of the Constitution of Pakistan provides a mechanism for sharing of the benefits of hydropower projects within the Federation of Pakistan. Now, it clearly provides that if a project is built in the public sector by the federal government or any organization, institution under the federal government, the profits earned by that project will go to the province in which that hydropower project is located. This provision was a part of the original 1973 Constitution. And it has been 50 years now. No attention has been given to the implementation of this constitutional provision. And it is of very, very prime importance to us. And I don't want to go into the details of what are the complications surrounding this, but we have to find a way to solve this issue of the provision of the Constitution of Pakistan, which is there. So, development of hydropower in the public sector is regulated by Article 161(2). That is one point I wonder. The second point is that this hydropower is basically subsidizing the tariff all over Pakistan, and let me be very frank, at the expense of KP. Now, I just give you an example. If you look at Dr. Hina, if you look at Tarbela is generating power, and is somebody taking notes of?
Yeah, we all are.
Okay.
It's been recorded also, and I'm also taking an
because agar meaningful banana hai, for the sake of the society at large. If you look at Tarbela, it is generating power at about 87 paisa, or maybe it has gone up in the last year also. And if you add the costs to it and whatnot, and if you look at private IPPs, and if you look at public sector generation companies in coal, or whether they are in thermal, or even if they are in RLNG. And if you look at the economic merit order of NTDC, you will have power projects producing a unit of electricity as high as 52 rupees a unit. Jamshoro is a case in point. And then 35 and 30 and 40 are the general. So what is happening basically is that power which is being generated at 35 and 40 and 30 rupees and 27 rupees is basically being subsidized by hydropower, and you're bringing the tariff down. That delta between 87 paisa plus certain additional costs and the sale price, which is, I think in February, which NEPRA determined in their determination, I think it's about 16 or 16.57, something like that per unit. Because of this cheap hydropower going into the system, you're bringing the tariff down. But that is the delta provided for by Article 161(2) of the Constitution as the net idle profit, which is the right of KPK. So this is something that society needs to look at, and especially as DPI needs to look at this and debate and see and come out with certain. At the same time, the Constitution also provides for, if any project, hydropower, is being constructed, the province in which is when it's going to be located needs to be consulted. And the consent of that province is required. This is something that's in your Constitution. Now, Dr. Hina, look, sometimes if you have the time, look at this. Another thing, public-private partnership, to my mind, is a very good proposition. If you look at projects in the public sector, and there are two organizations in the public sector which can construct hydropower. One is WAPDA and one is PDO of the provincial government. So we keep PDO and WAPDA on one platform as far as this particular point is concerned, and then I would like to separate the two for my further points that I all projects, hydropower projects in the public sector, if you look at all of them, they suffer from a time and cost overrun. And I think Jhelum is a classic case in point, where you look at the time overrun, and then you look at the cost overrun, and then you look at what the complications. So I think, Dr. Hina, we need also to put the microscope, put these projects under the microscope and see Can we afford these cost and time overruns? Or do we need some course correction that needs to be taken so that these projects are dealt with purely in a commercial perspective? And this is the case for both these organizations. But Neelam Jadam is a classic suicide, so I pointed that out. Now, if you look at the other extreme, that is the private sector. So private sector brings the investment, very commercial organizations giving it, there's a debt equity ratio, etc. And so many people are, and organizations are scrutinized. So the time and cost overruns generally have a very high sensitivity to the financial viability of that project. So the investor is very sensitive to a time and cost overrun. So time and cost overruns are minimized in the private sector. But that's not the end of the story. It gives, there is a problem associated with that. And that problem associated with that is that, okay, right, you get investment and you get a project. But these hydropower sites are not infinite. They're finite. They're finite sites. There are just a few sites. And they all happen to be in KP and some of them in AJK. So this is a poverty-stricken province anyway. And giving a hydropower site purely to a private sector is like not even selling your family silver, but just as more or less charity, you're giving your projects to the private sector. So what's in it for the province? If the public sector constructs a province, at least the constitution provides for a net tidal profit, which is not being honored for the last 50 years. But at least there is something, a mechanism which I can lodge my claim, and with this government has lodged their claims, and there has been a lot of progress in the CCI, and even now we are negotiating this matter. But purely private sector projects, what is in it for me? There's nothing in it for me. By me, I mean the province. Right? It will supply cheap power into the national grid and reduce the expensive power, which policy formulators have decided to construct coal power projects in Saiwan and import coal from South Africa and Indonesia and bring it all the way to Saiwan and generate power, while you have hydropower potential available in these. But then the private sector, so this province is at the same time paying the cost for the I don't know what word I should use, but for the inadequacies maybe of the policy. So I'll just give you an example. We have on Haro River a 900 megawatt project by the name of Suki Kenari. Suki Kenari is a 900 megawatt project. It will generate 1.2 billion rupees for KP government in the form of water use charge. a kilometer downstream of Suki Kenari, Pido, sitting here, Imran with me. Pido is constructing a 300 megawatt Balakot hydropower project 2 kilometers downstream of that. That's right. Inshallah, when this 300 megawatt project is constructed, this will generate 14 billion rupees per annum as revenue for this province.
1/3 of the capacity.
And this will do so for the next 100 years. So, Dr. Hina, कौन हमें अक्लमंद कहेगा? I'm talking very frankly because I no stakes and I would like to point out things as they are. So if you have 300 megawatts giving you 14-15 billion rupees and 900 Suki Kenari also giving you 45, 3 plus 3 plus 3, 45. So these two projects themselves would generate about 65 billion rupees for this project. And that's what your annual development program is, totally. That's how much you spend. So for this province, this is a crucial, something very, very crucial. Two of these projects finance bulk of your annual development program. And like Imran is developing in Pido, 150 megawatt Madhyana and 90 megawatt in Talang. So another 200. So 100 province can be met by projects for hydropower projects. And with due respect, I would also like to point out to Board of Investment and Trade, please do consider dishing out projects left, right, and center. Put something in it for this poverty-stricken, God-forsaken province. Now, on the PPP mode, I think, and I would like to develop models so those models can be replicated again. Invent the wheel. So what we have done is in Pido entered into an agreement with the Koreans on a public-private partnership basis for a 500 megawatt lower Spadga project, in which 26% of the equity is KP. And Hassan sitting there is, thank you, is helping us in developing this financial model for how to go into finalize this. So as we all know, there's a debt equity of 20% and 80% in these IPP projects, and of that 20%, this province takes 26% of the stakes. And with that, we will be able to leverage this public sector versus private sector debate into public-private partnership model that could give a more or less win-win for all stakeholders. And just one further word on this model, which if anybody wants details, Imran can share with them. We get a 6% free equity stake. That is 6%. Sorry, that's not a free. That's 6% free share in the revenues for the project.
Yes.
And the rest is 26% is our equity of that 20%. So this is a model that we are
Replicating.
Almost at the final stage, so which we will be able to replicate. Now we all know that hydropower projects are very good for the environment. They're very good for the local economy also, because 70% of the expenditure on a hydropower project remains within the economy. Like you're talking about, most of it is civil work, and some of it is capital. Whereas in thermal and these other projects, 70 or 80% is goes out of the economy. It goes into equipment, machinery, and whatnot. So hydropower is very good for, but what we haven't, and you've seen that we are just giving you the example of Saiwan. We are keen to develop those, and we are keen to develop the thermal, but we ignore for whatever reasons. I wouldn't like to mention here in this meeting, but you can all draw your own conclusions from that. Now, another thing I would like to point out is, Dr. Hina, and maybe this is also something for HDPI to work on further. And this is that KP faces a locational disadvantage of 16 to 20%. And this is because for the reason that we are very far away from the port, we are far away from the markets, whether they're the supply markets or they're demand markets, where our financial services and our other structures are not there. So, taken all this together, we face a 16% locational disadvantage in this province. So, unless we are able to offset this locational disadvantage, we cannot have a level playing field in this country. And that is why you see that not very many industries are operating in this province. Why should anybody invest in this province and industry where it starts off with a 16% locational disadvantage and then competes with? So it makes sense to have industry in the south. We would like, this government would like to change that situation. And again, we have developed a model whereby we are giving cheap hydropower to our industry. And that is something which is beneficial for our province, because feeding cheap power into the national grid, at least from our perspective, does not make sense. We'd rather give those cheap power to our industry and offset them locational disadvantage so that we can cover it. So we've developed this model on Pehur, and we are now going into phase 2 of that model, where we have received expression of interest from about 69 industry. They would like to purchase power from us. And Dr. Hina, I'd just like to point out to you, this is again a model that we have invented here in KP. the first time ever in Pakistan, power was auctioned. There was an open auction of power for Pehur project. And we had, I think, about 25, 26 industries that competed with one another. And we had a strike price, which is lower than the national grid, but which is higher than the rate at which we were supplying to the national grid. So we benefit and industry benefits. And as a result, the whole community benefits. So we want to take this model. So it is the first time that ever power, electricity was auctioned in this country. First time a public sector company going into dealing of power, whereby you use the wires of when we use the wires of PESCO, because look, you have PESCO uses the maximum demand it can bear this obsolete network infrastructure of PESCO, but still it can take about 20,000 2,000 megawatts worth of power into it. In winters, it is very nominal, much less than even 40% of the total demand. So the wires are there, I mean, they're lying there. We use them and we take our electricity in them and give them to the industry wherever from point A to point B. So wheeling, we are doing. And we've got a good price. So to offset the locational disadvantage, please, whenever there is a debate, IT must take into consideration the requirement of the Constitution, then the benefit to the province, then offsetting our locational disadvantage by this cheap power, which is fundamental. One final thing, and then I promise I'll keep quiet. One is these hydropower projects, wherever they are constructed, they dislocate people. Now, what our society does, and as a whole, we are very callous to the conditions of the project effectees, whether they're rich or they're poor. Some effectees of Tarbela are still going from pillar to post and not being fully compensated. So, what we do is that we bring a hydropower project, displace people from their land, displace people from their cultures, social disruption, whatnot, disruption from livelihood, and give them a compensation and government determined rates, whatever those are. Give them a one-time compensation, kick them in the backside, and go ahead with the project. And lower riparians like me benefit from those projects perpetually. And not only do I benefit, but my future generations benefit from them. And the future generations of those effectees suffer. That's an intergenerational disadvantage that we put those very poor. All these hydropower projects are very backward, remote areas. So they are anyway marginalized and poor segments of society, and we marginalize them even further, and we put them down the poverty lane even further. So one thing I hope that we can in FIDO and the national government address this issue also and develop a model which we are with the help of these two World Bank projects that we are undertaking. One is the Gabral Kalam and one is the Madhyan. So in that we have international top level quality consultants who we are going to engage. And this is an issue which is again very, very close to my heart, to how to make these projects, Dr. Hina, as perpetual beneficiaries into the benefit stream of the project. That's a challenge. And we owe it to our people and we owe it to society to come out with some sort of a solution where we can make them beneficiaries for life. And I hope we can, with this Gabral Kalam project, besides other things, get some scholarships and put the children of those Kostanis, Gujars, into institutions like Eastern College, Lawrence College, and whatnot, because we are all, I mean, the only difference that makes a human being is the education that you go through. And as a consequence of that education, the experiences that you have in life, they make the difference to you and to your future generation. So I may have exceeded my time of 15 minutes, but this is what, sir, I wanted to share with you. So these are the perspectives I wanted to give to you. So it's not just simply saying that, right, it's ecologically and environmentally very friendly and we need investment. And it generates what, as I said, what is it for me? कुछ भी नहीं है उस मॉडल पे अगर आप जाएं उस मॉडल पे अगर आप जाएं जिस पे आप जा रहे हैं तो मुझे तो फायदा नहीं है मुझे तो नुकसान ही नुकसान है मुझे क्या फायदा You must take into consideration the requirements of the units of the population. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Before Hina speaks, I would just like to make a mention of a few things and take lead from what Joyce Saab has mentioned. Sir, I was lucky to visit the Three Gorges Dam as part of my earlier portfolio as a project director. So I think in terms of relocation and in terms of socio-economic benefit, I think we can learn from their experience also and perhaps look at how, because our case is much smaller to what they did in Three Gorges and went a lot of, I can also, I'm a witness to what happened in Ilan Jail because I was negotiating between the Chinese and Chinese, and besides the cost and time overrun, the ecological damage that it had and the political damage that it had was immense, because for about 1 month before the river direction was redirected, Muzaffarabad almost became a little ground, and the entire river bank was flooded with trash. So I totally agree with you, sir. And also, thank you for giving us the direction for BOI to actually work on PPP more rather than IPP. Perhaps that is the best case for us, because it's not just the right kind of revenue for the province, but also supports the socio-economic development agenda that the government has. So thank you very much, sir. And I am happy to report that the time overrun of your speech was worthy the overall impact of the project. So we're very happy, sir, that you. I would request that before you leave, I would just, Hina, if you could ask Hassan or some of the speakers if they have any question from.
Yes, I think with this, in the interest of time, and Mr. Humayatullah has to leave, so we would encourage some questions coming in from the audience and also from the panelists who have joined us.
I think there are two.
So there are.
One from
Yeah, Ahad, would you like to?
Tahir Masood Sahab is also raising hand.
If I may be allowed to make some comments, is it okay? Can I say things?
जी, you're audible. अगर आप थोड़ा सा बीच में intermittent lag आता है, अगर आप उसको देख लीजिए.
जी, thank you very much. I think KPK, Board of Investment and SDPI, they have taken initiative to discuss very important subject. And as everybody knows, that energy is one of the key issues which has been discussed by the government, provincial as well as the federal governments. I have a particular aspect which I like to highlight because Advisor Sahab is also sitting there. I believe there's a lot of efforts are going on at the federal sector as well as the provincial sector to develop the renewable energy. I'll talk, I think, only on the renewable energy. My feeling is, because we have been working as a consultant to various organizations, provincial as well as the national organizations, my feeling is that there need to be a harmonization of efforts between the provincial governments as well as the federal governments as far as the renewable energy is concerned. My feeling is that whenever the provincial governments talk about the renewable energy, they have their own perspective. When the federal government talks about the renewable energy and they are developing a policy wherein they like to bring in the renewable energy up to about, I think they are planning to have it 25% share of renewable energy in the total power mix. And as Advisor Sahab has said very rightfully, that the hydro sector can bring in the total cost of the energy basket lower if we increase the hydro power within the renewable energy regime. My feeling is that whenever the provinces talk about the development of energy, there's a lack of planning. We plan on the need basis, on urgent basis. Advisor Sahab was mentioning a project in Sahiwal, which is coal-fired 1320 megawatt, and you are importing coal from outside and bringing the project in Punjab. There's a transportation cost. I don't know whether you know the background or not, that government of Punjab at that time wanted to build 6 power projects. And in my feeling, that could have been a disastrous, that once you build 6 power projects of that size in Punjab on coal base. I think the main reason for making a decision of development of coal power projects in Punjab, and that to 6 numbers, was lack of planning in the future. Because if you do not understand that you have a very well-planned policy of development of power projects in any province, that brings in these kind of decisions. And immediately after the coal, then one power project was developed in the coal sector. Then the shift was from coal to RLNG, and then the 4 power projects were developed in the RLNG base. Everything was need-based, that we have to eliminate the load shedding immediately. I believe there was a time when WAPDA was taking the planning issue.
I think it was more of a
development for 5 years, 10 years, and then for 15 years. I think the same thing has to be done by the provinces also, that you have to come up with the power planning development studies and a proper document in which you can identify the sites, you can identify the technology, whether it's going to be hydro, it's going to be solar, it's going to be wind. And then once you develop these sites, then these have to be in terms of solar, that can be even off-grid solutions, that can be on-grid solutions. Then we need to prioritize these projects on the basis of need, on the basis of availability of financing, on the basis of availability of interest in the private sector. So once there's a document which is fully spelling out all the requirements and then prioritize those development for the next 10 years, 15 years, then Board of Investment and the government can put those documents forward in the private sector for investment. Private sector investment is very competitive because they have a lot of options to invest in Pakistan. They have options to invest anywhere in the world. So they do not have time to see what are your priorities and how do they fit in. And I have seen a lot of private parties that they struggle for years because their project is not prioritized. They do not know whether the transmission is existing there. They do not know what's the demand in that area. And they are struggling in these issues, which should have been dealt by the government. So once we develop a planning study for development of renewable energy, and within renewable energy, as advisors have said, there's a lot of, there can be a priority for the hydro, similarly solar and wind. And then on the basis of these requirements, we have a catalog of projects which can be either offered to the private sector or which can be taken for development within the public sector. So we need to have this, I would call it a Bible of development of power projects for next 15 years. And this can only be developed through a comprehensive study, with which I think that can be developed with the consultation of a very good consultant who have technical experts, economical experts, and power experts within that group. And the government can support that study. That study may take 6 months to a year or maybe 2 years. But once that study is complete, then that should be followed as Bible by all the governments, not only this government, but the next government also.
Understood, sir. And I think the essence of what you have said is that if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So, sir, आप इस पर कुछ comment करने दो? But I have one sir observation also, and taking what Tayyab said, because when we were working on CPEC and even for this, which is almost at the end of this month, I see that in power division and even in petroleum division, when it comes to refining, I think there are two schools of thoughts that are actually emerging there, and that is actually jeopardizing our overall planning. One thinks that by having these 17,000 megawatts from CPEC and also from the projects that are being done provincially, our requirement of energy are met. But there is another school of thought which thinks that with the population growth and the industrialization that is being promised, perhaps the energy requirement beyond 2025 would be much more, and that this debate actually is stalling some of the potential investment that can. Similar debate is there for refining also, where they look at Parco and they have not been able to decide for the Saudi refinery project, and therefore they're not letting any other investment in refinery projects flow into Pakistan. So this is also an observation which is based on my own personal experience.
If you want my comment on this, Shahjahan Mirza is sitting there. He'd be in a better position to say more on the subject. But NTDC has already undertaken a study, the Integrated Generation Capacity Expansion Plan, which we have taken a completely different position from NTDC. KP government is in complete disagreement with that document that they have drawn, document that they have prepared. So maybe Tayyab Masood Saab could come in there and help refine that capacity expansion plan. Because that capacity expansion plan needs to be revisited.
Yes, thank you so much, first of all, for such a valuable insight. Yeah, if it's to Mr. Hamayatullah, I think we can take those and we can move on to our panel discussion after this.
I think the first question from Uzair Sadiq is almost what the Honorable Chief Guest highlighted. So I think that.
So I think Uzair's question probably he didn't get what I was trying to say. Maybe if he has a recording and he looks at that, maybe he gets the answer to that.
The other is regarding from Aruj Asghar is regarding land acquisition, so that it takes a lot of time. And that's a dilemma, I think,
that is an issue
in public sector. I think we can improve our mechanism for land acquisition, perhaps and lastly, Tariq Afridi is from UNDP, and he is asking that for a newly merged governance project, what is the government's plan for the electrification of the newly merged districts in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and why that offers a lot of opportunity
I'll respond to that. Tariq Afridi Sahab, there are two ways of going about it. One is the traditional way of extending the grid network to the merged areas, which is there in all over Pakistan, and there are attendant problems of the national grid, which is being extended by the federal government into the merged area. The other option, two options, which I think the KP government is embarked upon. One is this mini micro hydro power projects, which are set up in these very, very remote areas, and they are off-grid solutions, and they have their own mini grid. So for one, that is the area in which to focus on. And the second thing is solar. Solar solutions also, I think the provincial government with its meager resources is going into a large scale effort into solarizing the merged areas, whether they are population below a certain poverty level, or they are solarization of the government buildings, government headquarters there in the merged areas. And I think a lot of solarization has already been done in the merged areas. So of course, a lot needs to be done. So one is extending the grid there, and the second is establishing their own mini grids in those areas, which can be done through mini micro, where hydro is available, or into solar.
Just for your information, sir, today later in the afternoon, about 5 p.m., we have a meeting with NTO, National Productivity Organization, and they're coming with some proposal with probably Japanese investment in mini micro hydro, and also in involving our university, especially JIK and perhaps textile and other engineering like Kushal, to work on these turbines for those projects. So I'm quite excited about that. We had one preliminary meeting in Planning Commission. I was able to advocate Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as the starting point for that. They wanted to go to other province, but I said that let me welcome you first. Perhaps that discussion
Shahjahan Mirza sahab will like to speak.
Yeah, I would like to make a small comment basically before Hamay sahab leave, just getting benefit of his presence. I certainly appreciate, I may not be fully aware, so I have heard something I know that the KP government is taking excellent initiative in terms of contributing into the energy sector of Pakistan with the PPP model, with the supply of power from hydropower projects to the industries and industrial zones. But one thing which is to some extent is the extension of what Dr. Tahir Masood said. I think there is a lack of coordination with the federal government, which we need to improve. Why I'm saying this? Because you are making excellent initiative, which actually will take away some of the demand from the national grid, and it will basically, your projects, hydropower projects or solar projects will be serving that demand. So what the disconnect which is coming is that when we are making in the demand supply planning and looking at the various optimum options that how to optimize the grid, well, one part of which is the IGSEP, indicative generation expansion plan. So there, this supply side is not accounted for. So what is happening that you are doing the projects where there's no specific committed capacity payment whenever the hydro is available. So they will supply power, which will be at a cheaper rate than the rate on which power is supplied to the industry. But at the same time, accounting for the demand which should be coming from the KP government and KP industrial development, we are committing the projects which has a fixed capacity payment. So we need to remove this mismatch Otherwise, the situation where we are in, that we have certain liabilities of the capacity payment, but we are not finding the buyer to sell sell electricity to those demand because of COVID and various other reasons. Although I don't buy this philosophy that we have overcapacity, but still I think for the purposes of planning and making the overall integrated energy supplies in the sector, we would request that the federal government and the power division should be more in the loop while you are making this planning, and maybe we'll be able to contribute somewhat from our own experience in PPIB. So that's the only comment which I wanted to make in your presence. Otherwise, we can discuss the issues in the panel discussion.
Shahjahan Sahab, I'd just like to respond. Thank you very much. One thing is that, look, till date, KP and PDO was a very, very minor player in this sector. So I'm glad you've acknowledged and you've realized that PDO is now flexing its muscles and wants to come onto the national stage. Having said that, since we were a minor player so far, we have no contribution in either the planning that was done so far or the mismatch within at the federal level, the situation that we are in today, the capacity payments or the circular debt or the overcapacity or the tariff, high tariff. I don't think when all this was happening, we were an insignificant player. So this is just one thing. I just want to, since you're there at the federal level, I just wanted to point that out to you. Secondly, Shahjahan Sahab, these projects that we are constructing, you must appreciate one thing, that the power purchase agreements that we managed to have, and Pehur is a case in point. Project was constructed 10 years back, and we didn't even have a power purchase agreement to sell power into the national grid. So it was the Prime Minister's personal interventions numerous times that we managed to get power purchase agreements for 3 of our projects. Machai, which is a 2.5 megawatt project, is still struggling to get a power purchase. In fact, I feel embarrassed to mention it to the Prime Minister that we can't get a 2.5. I feel it's not worth his time even to bring it to his knowledge now anymore. But anyway, these projects which we entered into power purchase agreements with the federal government, we voluntarily decided to opt out of capacity payment. And we said, right, take this on a take and pay basis. Well, we're happy with that. As far as my third perspective, and this is another perspective, Shahjahan Sahab, that you may want to look into. And again, I say that, look, we are operating in Hassan Sahab, in given paradigms. Yes. Yes. And Shahjahan Sahab, I think we need to come out of this paradigm. This paradigm of a monopolistic structure of the power sector, no matter what you've done, more of the same will give you more of the same. So we will keep on going into this. The circular debt is going to increase and our problems are going into this. So what we need to do is address these structural issues, address the monopolistic structure in the power sector. And I won't go into further details on it, but thinking within this paradigm is going to lead us nowhere. And to my mind, if the Constitution and the law and the NEPRA law and your laws and our laws allow us to go in a direction, allow the federating units to undertake projects which the constitution and the legal framework of Pakistan allows them to do. If we make these small efforts also subservient to that monopolistic structure, then I think we are doomed forever.
So I think Shahjahan Sahab,
May I just say something very briefly, also?
only
I-
if you are supporting what we are saying.
Yes, of course, and I think Hamaisa, and you know very well that probably at the federal government level, PPIB is your strongest supporter throughout this process of development of hydropower projects. What I wanted to say actually, because I agree what you said that previously whatever has been happening, you have better experience, but now moving forward, because federal government is also taking initiative to what you have referred the structural changes in the sector, and we are planning, as you are aware, that by the mid of next year, there will be the competitive trading market in place, although initially it will be a very small amount of electricity which will be traded. So in fact, this what you are doing. This is supplementing the same efforts that we do the wheeling, and we make this market a multiple buyer contract. The bulk power consumer can buy from the market. So we are coming out of that that structure which has put us in place. So this comment was just to make the things going forward better. We rather than basically moving on with our previous experiences, both from the federal and the provincial government, we should try to move ahead together now, because we have a common cause now to bring in more competition and get rid of the structure where we are stuck up paying the huge capacity payments and not able to use the electricity to actually dilute those capacity payments.
Thank you, Shahjahan Sahab. I think what has come out from the discussion thus far is perhaps more involvement of provinces, especially those like AJK and KP, and even perhaps Sindh, because of the wind corridor and also the proximity of with the Indian Ocean that the advisor sub mentioned, and perhaps not just our usual phrase of out of box thinking, but perhaps a little bit of flexibility from your side. But I am happy to report, sir, that Shahjahan Saab and I go a long way, and he's been supporting our mission in CPEC, and I hope our two projects which we are now recommending, new ones, perhaps would also be included in that. So thank you very much. I would request you, sir, and we will keep inviting you, sir, in similar forum. This is one of its kind. We will expand the scope. On behalf of the government of Pakhtunkhwa, I would like to thank SDPI for coming here, and despite the fact that we have COVID restrictions, and also you, sir, for coming here despite your busy schedule, and also your engagement that we were told. Thank you, sir. And we will continue with our
Just
sorry.
on behalf of STPI, my gratitude to Mr. Humayatullah Khan and the KTBOIT for facilitating this kind of such insightful discussion, and especially highlighting the challenges that are arising from the province. And we have definitely taken this into account, and we shall be working on it. So the purpose of this conducting this PPD is a series of public-private dialogues we are doing in all provinces of Pakistan under the new ARE policy of the government of increasing the share of 30% hydro and 30% renewables in the energy mix of Pakistan. And it's like you rightly said that we need an inclusive framework to have more manageable, socially, environmentally, more environmental, economical, viable ways to make this transition happen. And all these efforts are basically empowering all of us to gear this forward, to take these clean energy forward in Pakistan. And thank you so much for your time, for your valuable contributions. And we shall be keeping you engaged in the process. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Shahjahan Saab, shukriya.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Hina, if you just allow me, yeah, because I have to rush for another meeting. So if you just allow me, I have to make some quick comments. And this is Muhammad Ali Qureshi, national expert RE from UNIDO.
Please, Ali.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, I think it's a very insightful discussion, and the points which has been raised by Mr. Hamayatullah Khan was very much indeed pertinent to what actually gives us a holistic picture of what actually the things are going on in the direction. But I would like to, make some comments in relation to the public-private partnership, basically. So I believe that there is another model which was explored before, and there also potential that if we can look some projects on the BOT basis, because there are a lot of investors outside Pakistan, talking from the personal experience, as we are working with some international investors, and we find out that most of them, they are interested in going for some bigger projects, hydel projects, but that will be on the BOT basis. So I think that is also an area where we can look into that, how these projects could be materialized, how those investors could be facilitated. There could be some mutual sort of an agreement between the two. Secondly, I believe that from the investors perspective, another issue that is very pertinent is basically there are some sites that has been auction for the hydropower. For instance, CJ Link is one of them, and there are some political disputes between the provinces in terms of the water coming to those canals or something like that. So in that case, if how these disputes, I mean, there should be some way out through which these interprovincial disputes over those canals or those sites needs to be get resolved, basically. And I think another thing that could be looked upon at the same very moment is the hydrological risk, that how this risk could be be mutually shared between the investors or with the provincial government. That is something that could be looked upon. Last but not least, and this is also a sort of a question for the forum, that when you talk about the IGSEP, how the priorities of the provinces, has been catered within the IGSEP plan. Because again, like what Hamayatullah Saab has said, and the other provinces, they are also, struggling upon on this. So the better coordinated way would be, I believe that, like Shahjahan Mirza pointed out, that it should be, if we need to ensure some sort of a better coordination, I think the priorities of the provinces has to be addressed adequately. I will, and another question that has been, of course, that will be raised by one of the participant, that is on the newly merged areas, providing electricity to those off-grid communities and to those basically. So when we talk about these mini or micro hydro projects, and it's very good that we are implementing that those projects. Some of them have already been executed by PIDO. Some of the phase 2 is already in the pipeline. But at the same very moment, I think there should be a sort of a mechanism through which we need to figure out that how those projects will be, managed once they are being implemented, how to make them more sustainable, and what are the viable models. Because if you want private sector to come in for those projects or something, there could be some sort of a rural electrification strategy should be there. There should be some financing models that should be in place, financing instruments should be in place, that could support actually the electrification of those areas, basically. So with this, I will take a leave, and thank you so much, everyone, and thank you so much, Dr. Hina. And I'm very much excited to see the presence of Mr. Shah Jahan as well. So thank you so much for making me the part of this discussion. Over to you, Hina.
Thank you so much, Ali. And I think very rightly pointed out that how we could also ensure that the interprovincial disputes of water are also taken into account while we are harvesting this opportunity to develop hydropower in the country. So moving on, I will not take a lot of time in the agenda setting presentation because we have initiated this dialogue already with lots of points and challenges coming in. So what I would request is to go, I think it's a panel discussion already, and I would like to give a floor to Mr. Shahjahan Mirza again. If you would like to add some more points on the topic and on the subject and have your comments and thoughts about it. So over to you, Mr. Shahjahan.
Thank you very much. It is a very useful discussion, and the points which Muhammad Ali has raised, I think they are all relevant points in terms of development of hydropower projects, or what we call the slow development of hydropower projects in Pakistan. I will try to address some of the key points basically, and leave remaining to the other panelists. Last point which Muhammad Ali raised is very critical, and that is the interprovincial coordination and the federal level coordination to develop these projects in harmony so that later on they are not stuck up. So the best way going forward, which I usually suggest, but that is that when PPAB does some project, apart from a hydropower project particularly, apart from taking the consent from the provinces, which obviously is a constitutional requirement of Pakistan. So what we actually do, we get a permission or consent from the power purchaser, who currently is a central power purchasing agency, and we get an NOC from the NTDC, which is the grid company which has to evacuate the power. So when we have these two clear NOCs from these two entities, then we issue the first LOI of the projects. So that makes actually a life very simple, because once these two key stakeholders have given their nod, there is a very less probability that the project gets into stuck up later on. When they have gone at the advanced stage. But unfortunately, as I raised the point in the presence of Hamayatullah Sahab, that this process has not been carried out for the provincial projects. Provinces have issued a lot of LOIs for hydro projects, for wind power projects, for solar power projects. And now the entities which are responsible for buying power from those projects, which have to commit that they will provide the power evacuation system by the time the project achieves COD, and the CPPA who have to buy this power for next 25, 30 years from those projects, they are not on board. So they have problem in accepting those projects, and in this way, actually the sponsor suffers maximum in the process. Once they have got the LOI, they have done the feasibility, probably they have invested some money in doing their EPC contracting or EPC bidding and other development activities. So later on, they know that nobody is actually owning that project after all this activities. So what is required, that we need to have more and more coordination and consent from all those entities which have to actually buy power and develop the transmission line activities. I do recognize and I totally respect the constitutional right of the provinces, which is given for the generation and sale of electricity. So there's no denial of that. But again, since they have to come to the national grid and they have to sell to the national entities, there should be a good coordination between them. So that will resolve the major issue of interprovincial coordination where the projects are stuck up. And as most of you would be aware, that in 2015 power generation policy, the government and the CCI took a big step that the policy allows that once these LOI holders, which have been issued LOI by the province, when they come at federal level, basically the PPIB give them a tripartite letter of support, which is basically the same thing, and after that PPIB handle those projects. So this has opened a way forward for those projects which were stuck up for many years. But again, when these projects come to us, we don't have a mandate actually to move forward with issuance of the tripartite letter of support unless the power purchaser and the transmission line provider give the NOC that they are willing to buy this power and transmission line will be available. So that is basically, I think, a very systematic route which we should follow so that the investors don't stuck up and suffer. So we realize that there are many investors which are stuck up in that, and mostly they are the small hydropower projects which have not been moving forward. Recently, we have issued 2 tripartite letters of support these small hydropower projects in AJK, and some of the KP hydropower projects are also under consideration. Regarding hydrological risk, I think that's also a very interesting point, which we need to see, because when we talk about the large BOT projects, obviously the lenders would not take that risk. That's forgiven. They are the party who want to actually some sort of surety, some sort of not guarantee, but at least some sort of surety that their revenues will stay intact. So they are not affected by the hydrology or variation in the hydrology. So there are many things which we are thinking, and as currently a new policy is under development as a broader plan, which is the National Electricity Policy, and then there will be a National Electricity Framework, and under that there will be various policy frameworks to attract the investment. One of these policies, which is the RE Policy 2019, that is already finalized. So following that policy, what we are considering in the new policy, which I hope in the next couple of weeks we'll be able to share with the stakeholder for their views. So what we are considering, one way to cover this hydrological risk and share this risk is that we only take this risk, the power purchaser take this risk during the loan period. The first 10 or 12 years, when the lenders are involved in the project, they can, at that time, the power purchaser take the risk. The second thing which could be done, and I would like the various stakeholders to provide their view, second thing is to share the risk. To the extent the investment is coming from the lender, that proportion of the risk still stay with the power purchaser, and the equity risk, obviously the equity is the risk seeker basically. So equity, the portion of the risk is taken by the sponsors. There is a provision of must run as well, which we need to see that if these projects have to be kept must run, so how we handle with this. So we are looking at this practical model, because our market is not so much developed that we can leave everything to the commercial merit and the commercial risk metrics. So we need to develop something where we initially, at least for the next few years or maybe 5-10 years, we basically share this risk with the power purchaser and the government. So that is the second area. The policy will hopefully be with you in next couple of weeks, and we would invite your valuable views on that. The issue of bigger power projects, BOT projects, I think it has been very clearly highlighted that there is a need for the proper planning. We have seen in the country in the last 30-35 years moving from one end to another end. There have been cycle. Once we get into the severe shortages, then we go out in the market and try to get whatever we can get the earliest. So in that earliest and quickest generation policy, we certainly compromise the optimum solution. We certainly compromise the pricing model, because the world runs with the demand supply situation. When we are so hard pressed with the demand side, obviously we are not able to negotiate and get the best price from the market. So the only solution is to do a long-term planning. And this is a right time, I would say, because we have, if not extra or excess power, we have sufficient power in the system. So the government is doing the right thing to prepare a 10 to 15 year least cost generation expansion plan. I fully agree with the Himayat Saab that the least cost generation plan, or IGSEP, which is currently has been developed, that has a lot of deficiencies which need to be improved. The provinces have their own reservation, but professionally, even PPIB has raised many issues on this IGSEP. So this is being reworked, and hopefully by next month, its next version will be ready. And I hope there will be many improvements in that, considering the point of view of the provinces and other professional bodies and other stakeholders. In this context, again, the issue will come about the projects which will be processed. So obviously the IGCEP, when it is run, what we call the free run, basically the IGCEP model, we use Plexos for that. It is not concerned that where the project is located, what are the political sensitivity, what are the interprovincial sensitivity. It picks up projects on merit. So there are financial merits, there are transmission constraint issue, there are variability and intermittency issues, because when the model picks up, it has to see that if it is picking up a hydropower project, it is picking up a renewable power project, particularly the wind power projects, their intermittency, their seasonality, their variation in generation during various hours and times of the day. So that is a very complex model, and obviously it accounts for everything. But the overriding principle is that what share we want to give to the various provinces in that, because there are certain resources which are available in more than one province. Particularly the solar is available in almost every province, and the wind is available in Balochistan, in Sindh, and even to some extent in Punjab also. So the government is working on it, and probably government will give some sort of guidance where how to basically cover in the IGCEP. One way of doing it is the model adopted, which is in the RE policy 2019, that once the quantum is determined through this IGCEP exercise, then there is a committee at the federal level under the Alternate Energy Development Board, which will decide that how much quantum will be procured from which province. And this committee is chaired by the Power Division. And all the provinces, AJK and Gilgit-Baltistan, are the members of this committee. So that is where we are trying to create a consensus, so that beforehand there is a consensus, and the investors don't stuck up in between when they have done lot of work on that. Remaining issues, I think, which we generally talk about for particularly hydropower projects, which require huge land for development. I think we need to improve our land acquisition law, which is basically provincial subject. So we are running the Land Acquisition Act of 18th century, but the world has gone 2 centuries ahead. I think that's where we need a lot of improvement, because this is the area where most of the project gets stuck up. Their financial closes delay, their cost overruns. So that is the area on which the provinces and federal government should work to improve this mechanism. Similarly, the environmental, I think, is becoming more and more critical, because the financing for those projects which are not environmentally fully compliant with the international law and international requirement, they are not being financed. So I think that's also a very critical area where we need to be very clear that what environmentally we need to do, particularly in the large projects where the bigger displacements are involved. So that relocation and displacements are becoming more and more serious concern with the financiers. So with this, whatever we are doing in the policy, whatever PPIB has learned maybe over the last 15-20 years while doing these projects, we're trying to put in all our experience and lessons into this policy, which we'll be sharing with you. And we will certainly like that you give your professional input, so that we make a policy which is acceptable to all the stakeholders, and which is actually in line with the government objective to make the competitive trading market in the country operating by mid of next year. So that will give a lot of boost. Actually, what I generally say that Pakistan was a pioneer and leader in terms of development of IPP in this whole region, South Asian region, because at that time no country was ahead of that. But unfortunately, we stuck up with the same model of long-term PPA and government guarantees. We have not moved forward, while other countries which started later than us, they have actually been successful in setting up the market. So let's work together to achieve this objective. Otherwise, this circular debt and the high tariff are not going to go away for a very long time if we don't come out of this long-term PPA and this fixed payment model. So with this, I conclude. I think remaining we can cover in the question-answer session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I'll quickly move on to Mr. Imran Halim from PIDO for his insights from KPK. He's the Director Renewable Energy, PIDO in KPK government.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hina. Thank you, Shahjahan Mirza sir. You have encompassed everything in one go. Actually, I have some questions for SDPI. They have to look into it and to find answers during their upcoming sessions. My main point is like when we are seeing at the government of Pakistan level, at federal level, at the same time, they are preparing the IGCEP indicative generation capacity expansion plan 2047, where they have parked, I'm talking about the previous version, where they have parked about 35,000 megawatt of hydropower projects at the tail end 2040 up to 2047. In the first phase of, for the first 10 years, they have kept the renewable energy projects, which is a quantum of 26,000 megawatt. After 2030 to 2040, they are talking about the coal-based power plants. When we look into this IGCEP, it's much more overambitious. For the coal projects, we are facing, Shahjahan Mirza sir knows that we are facing in the board meetings, a lot of issues like coal supply agreement, water use agreements, and we are talking quantum of 32,000 megawatt for the within the 10 years. So one point is this one for the IGCEP that the targets are overambitious and it's not properly planned because all the hydro has gone to the tail end. Second point is at the same time we are preparing a plan under the National Electricity Policy, National Electricity Plan. Third point is we are talking about the competitive trading bilateral contracts market, open market. So all these policies and frameworks and regulations are in conflict with each other. In CTBCM, we are talking about the open market, wholesale market. But in the IGCEP, we are fixing the capacities for hydro and other projects till 2047. So if Shahjahan Saab can give some points on this. And regarding the renewable energy projects, this changing policies, I mean like policies are always there for the improvement of the national level. But unfortunately, the changing policies has hit us badly when it comes to the renewable energy projects in KP. We initiated 5 projects of 250 megawatt capacity, and those 5 projects, the international financing agencies were there, but unfortunately, because of this new policy, re-policy, all our efforts has gone down the drain, and now we'll be going for the bidding. But I have got some information that in the bidding phase, our DI Khan projects for which they have got the generation license, they have got the tariff, that will not be entertained because they are thinking about some readily available grids at Piso and Karak. So these are the things, I mean, like there needs to be coordination properly. And regarding the IGCEP, National Electricity Plan, and the third is the CTBCM, how we will be coordinating these things, because it's in a very short time, we are moving to the, world level competition. We are moving to the open market to keep this one purchaser out of the market and we look for competition with others. So if Shahjahan can say something on
Thank you, Imran. I think whatever point you have raised, they are all relevant and critical points. But as I said earlier, there is a background to this issue. So I have already suggested a way forward to that regarding various contradictions. So as I said earlier, that now government is working on a national electricity policy, which will be approved by the CCI. And under that, there will be an electricity framework, which will actually set up what are the energy requirements, what are the government priorities, and how this will be get. And to achieve that, there will be incentive package, which we are calling the policy framework, which is under preparation. So all these issues will be addressed. As I said earlier, IGCEP in current form is obviously has a lot of deficiencies which are being covered. So government is working on setting up some principles for inclusion of the project from the provinces. But one thing I think which is certain, that there is a certain category of projects which generally I say those should be the letter of support projects, that some of the projects will be treated in the IGCEP as a committed projects. So the projects which have reached an advanced stage, those will be treated as a committed projects, and they will not be touched by the IGCEP, whether they meet the economic criteria within the IGCEP or not. So that is one way of giving comfort and to the existing investors who have reached at advanced stage. The other thing which you have said, that we are going to the competitive market, again, the fundamental assumption is that the projects which are at advanced stage, the competitive market will not actually disrupt those projects. The third thing which I would like to add in this respect, that you might be aware that all the PPA which we have done at federal levels, even in 1994 PPAs, because there was a plan of strategic plan for development of private sector, so that PPAs also include that with the mutual consent. The word mutual consent is very important. With the mutual consent, those IPPs can go and compete in the market. So if we ask them to go to the market and compete, obviously we'll sit down with them and we'll develop a reasonable mechanism which will create a win-win situation for them to participate in the market. And the market which will inshallah be operational by mid of next year, that will just be a very, very small portion. Initially, maybe hardly 1-2% of the electricity would be traded in the first year of the grid. So gradually it will start improving. The new projects which will come will put up a mechanism where they will be in the competitive market, and the going forward, we can also ask the existing PPA holders to develop mechanism and compete in the market. So the government intention so far is not to disrupt basically the existing arrangement. We don't want to spoil the environment in that sense that unilaterally we make some decision. We're trying to coordinate the IGCEP, the new policy, the competitive trading market, and all that in that context. And the issues, there are some of the issues even on the RE side, which have been issued, some projects, which have been issued LOIs and probably the tariff from NEPRA also. But when we made these categories in the government, and which were endorsed by the CCI, particularly for the RE projects, so those tariffs were not there. So that's why basically even after having tariff, they are not being entertained for issuance of the LOS. Rather, they are being asked to go and compete in the competitive bidding process. So if there are some specific example, obviously we can take care of them, but as a matter of principle, government don't want to do anything outside the competitive bidding process now. The projects which are coming new, they will certainly go there, but the existing projects which have achieved a certain level of development, so they will stay in their current category. So that's briefly what is the scenario on this aspect.
I think with this, I'll quickly go on to Mr. Hassan Khyber. He's with us. Hassan.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am actually Hassan Saab's namesake, so it's not Hassan. Thank you so much, Hassan Saab and SDPI, for arranging a wonderful seminar. And I think I listened to everyone, Shah Jahan Saab, Himayatullah Saab, and I think it's a very enlightening session. So thank you so much for doing that. I would just say, I would just keep it very brief and say a few words about what we are doing with the KP government in PIDO. So I am working with this program, Sustainable Energy and Economic Development Program, which is funded by UK government. And amongst other things, we are working very closely with PIDO and the Energy Department, and Himayatullah Saab and everyone else. And I think this is a very exciting time to be there, because while Himayatullah Saab touched upon many important policy issues, I think we also know that KP government is also working on a number of exciting things. And I think some of them he referred to, like wheeling and other things. But I think there are two key areas where PIDO is focusing on, where we are helping them. One is to tap the untapped potential through the under construction portfolio and through the underdevelopment portfolio of PIDO. And the other one is to make that energy available at cheaper rates to local energy. So SEED, based on the success of PIHUR project, SEED is now working with PIDO for wheeling of another 150 megawatts or so of energy, and to make that energy available to industries. And we are quite excited about that. So I think that's one. The other thing is that we have worked with PIDO to put together the entire power sector landscape in terms of a business plan, which shows that, okay, this is what the energy demand is look like. This is what PEDO is planning to do in terms of hydro, micro hydel, solar and everything. And we do believe that that business plan is going to set the stage for future investments in the province. It's almost near finalization. Most importantly, to be able to implement that business plan, to be able to tap into the kind of projects that we have talked about, to be able to say no to IPP projects and say yes to PPP projects with more equity contribution from KP government, I think what we need is a transformation of PEDO and the transformation of how government has been looking at the energy portfolio. And we are working with PEDO to achieve that, which means taking a more corporate approach, creating SPV structures for projects, ring fencing liabilities so that these could be used to raise more financing. And right now we are already working with PEDO to raise about $130 million, but we do believe that this is just going to be a start, and this is going to lead to many more investments in the future years. And again, very happy to be part of the overall contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan. I think very great initiatives being taken by the C team. Of course, working with the PEDO and very relevant to the discussion that we have done, and lots of good information and new ways coming in. I think moving on, we'll have Mr. Faisal Hayat, who is with us from KP Economic Zone Development and Management Corporation. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Hassan Saab, for calling us to this meeting. As you said, all the energy, as Himayatullah Saab also mentioned, that the wheeling project that they initiated. So it started around 4 years ago. We had a meeting in the Provincial Assembly where it was floated as an idea that on wheeling we can provide the cheap electricity to the industry. So what we did was we took the first, this Pihur was our first example for that. So we started deliberations on that, which finally it was a big process which ended in what happened was that like we have around 14 megawatts of electricity available, and we provided that to 4 industries in Gaduna Madai Industrial Estate. There was the price was calculated, they sat together, they calculated the price. Before that, the electricity was provided to the national grid at the rate of ₹1 per unit. But even that ₹1 was not paid for the past 7 or 8 years. So what we did was we brought in these industrialists who were willing to buy that energy. So they auctioned, they had a price, they sat together, and a price of around ₹8 was set. So that ₹8, not like previously, that ₹8, what they did was they paid 8 crore rupees in advance, and the rest they said that we'll be giving you the billing for that every month. So what happened was the PEDO and the provincial government got around 40 to 50 crore rupees, as Mr. Imran will know. So it was an out of the box idea. So like I personally think even the PEDO or the provincial government, like not much work has been done previously. So all these ideas that are coming now, especially from PEDO and from Himayat Saab, they are adding value to our industry as well. Right now, like the 4 industries we have in Gadoon, they are all getting that electricity on ₹8 per unit. So in return, what they have done is that they have started expansion. Like I'll take the example of Charat. So they have opened another unit. They have given jobs to around 270 people in that, and they are getting all this packaging industry. Previously, it was not there. Now that they got cheap electricity, so they've come up with another plant. So as I said, 270 people they've hired, and their total business of expansion is around 4 to 5 billion rupees. The same has happened to Gadoon Textile Mills. What they did was they had some vacant area with them, so they have established a new mill over there. That mill has employed around 1,600 people. So like if PEDO and if the department that had they not given us this extra cheap electricity, this expansion would not have happened. And another thing I would like to add, to bring to your notice, is that usually when we are witnessing a lot of industrialization in Gadoon, since I'm looking after Gadoon. So in the past 2 years, we have added 26 new units. So what the first thing that they do is that they go to the PESCO and they give an application. So the PESCO arranges a visit and they say that you are going to get a transformer of 200, 400 without doing full investigation how much electricity they need. They also are unable to do the energy audits, like how much electricity are they going. The only thing they do is they say you bring in 1.5 million rupees, 2.5 million rupees, and we'll install the transformer for you. I personally think through this meeting, I personally think that a mechanism, a policy should be there. Like if, for example, there's an industrialist who's investing 10 crore rupees, 5 crore rupees, 15 crore rupees, even he should be told that although you are establishing a machine, bringing in the machinery and all the building, why don't you also come up with some proportion of your investment to the solar energy or something? Why is it that WAPDA is providing or the PESCO is providing all? He should take his own ownership for that as well. That will add to his profitability. So I personally think that some knowledge should be imparted that when he's investing into a new business, he should also keep this in his mind that although I'm spending 10 crore rupees, why don't I invest 1 crore rupees for solar technology and install it so that he'll have cheap electricity for a long time to come. So thank you very much for this panel. So I personally think that if these ideas are also incorporated, so I personally think we can add a lot of profitability to the businesses as well.
Yes, thank you so much.
Can I just make a mention of a few things? And I think Faisal has aptly highlighted something. But as part of our government's vision and industrial policy, we're looking at about 10 new special economic zones and industrial states in the next 10 years. And for that to happen, and also for investment to actually flow to those zones and states, we would need energy, and we need sustainable form of energy. I think PIDO, KPSMEC on the delivery part and us on the institutional, soft part of policy formulation are working extensively on this. So far, we've been successful as far as Rashaka is concerned in getting the energy requirements, but I think it's a long way to go, and it has to happen through stakeholder engagement.
Yeah. And I think at this point in time, as Hassan was mentioning about the business model of KP projects, because they are working on it. So the KPSMIC should closely coordinate with them, because, as Shahjahan Sahab said earlier, that there is a certain process and procedure for the inclusion of these projects at the national grid. So if we are not qualifying there, so at least we should have some alternative, for which Himayat Sahab was also talking. So there should be a coordination between KPSMIC and even there should be a meeting with the Sansa for the business model, so that things can be aligned at the proper time.
Okay, so thank you so much. I think wonderful comments and suggestions being made for how can we pave way forward and how to overcome the existing challenges that are being faced by the government. So we have questions coming in, but with the interest of time, I would just like to take a few and would request respective panelists if they could have their insights on it. The one is related to the hydrological risk that has been posed up. So since we are talking about having inclusive engagement of the stakeholders, so do you think that you also have the water experts rightly being involved in devising a strategy on this matter? So if other than the power sectors itself, so how important they are playing their role in the hydropower development? Probably if Hassan or, yeah.
For the hydrological risk, Shahjahan have already, I think, answered that part. But normally when the project is developed by the private sector, so definitely they go by the policy. In the present policy, in the KP government and at the federal level, the hydrological risk is borne by the power purchaser. That is the CPPAG, government of Pakistan. But now as the things are changing, power market is evolving, and a lot of the responsibilities which were taken and risks taken by the federal government or the power purchaser, now it is being shifted to the power producer. So for the hydropower, the hydrological risk is now the structure of the tariff first was take or pay, but now it is take and pay. In the take or pay, whatever you are doing, you just have a capacity of this much megawatt, and your risk is covered by the power purchaser, and you are getting paid by the capacity payments and all these things. But now in take and pay, what is the scenario like? It's addressing the hydrological risk, and voluntarily KP government has already shifted to the take and pay tariff regime. And this regime, whatever amount of gigawatt hours or kilowatt hours you are producing, it will be purchased by the federal government if they have an agreement with you, and whatever is not produced is not paid to you. So the risk has already been, shared between the. But one most important thing which is coming into the new policy, Shahjahan Sahab was talking about, and I'll get opportunity of this panel discussion and request that he can share the draft with us, because at the same time we are also changing our policy, amending our policy. So Shahjahan Sahab was saying that normally the lenders will not take the responsibility of your projects unless and until they're not sure. So in the new policy, as I got from his discussion, for the debt repayment period, the risk will be borne, or the risk will be borne by the power purchase, and after that, when the equity phasing will be started, it will be borne by the power producer who will be producing it. So basically, the main purpose behind this change in the policy was to give a relief to the lenders so that they can invest in the project equity.
Okay.
I hope this has answered the hydrological risk part and the other part.
Absolutely. I think we had some other related questions as well that have been already been part of this discussion, and I'm sure that the audience has already gained the answers from there. So with this, I would like to thank you to all the panelists who have joined us here. Despite having this third wave of pandemic, we managed to make it happen very successfully. And with this, the special thanks to KPBOI for hosting us very generously. And with their support, without their support, this wouldn't have been possible today. So thank you so much to all the panelists and all the attendees, all the distinguished speakers who have joined us for this discussion, and the STPI with this continued efforts to make this clean energy transition, including solar, wind, hydro, happening in the country. We have advocated the need of having a collaborative effort through networks. That is a network called the Clean Energy Transition Network, under which we have proposed 3 subgroups. The RE group, National Capital Impact, where we are talking about ecological risks and the water issues and all that. And then the corporate sustainability groups looking into the private sector scope in this area. So, but I would like to take this along with the message that we have from our Executive Director, Dr. Abid, for a minute, and then I'll hand over to Hassan Daud Saab. Yeah, so if you could play the last message by Dr. Abid Suleri.
Transition to clean energy requires collective efforts of government, of academia, of think tanks, and of individual citizens. And in order to promote this collectivity and in order to promote this collaboration, Sustainable Development Policy Institute has initiated a network called Clean Energy Transition Network. If you are interested in promoting clean energy, if you are interested in supporting this transition towards clean energy, then please join us. We have 3 subgroups. The first group is Renewable Energy Working Group. The second subgroup is Corporate Sustainability Group. And the third subgroup is Natural Capital Impact Network. I look forward to seek your support, and I look forward to work in collaboration with you.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Hassan.
Thank you so much. I think it was quite, discussion was quite enlightening and fruitful for us. Shahjah Saab, Waqar Saab, and Hassan and rest of the participants. I think if we can have series of similar discussion, sectoral discussion, not just on energy, but also other sector, which are key areas for us, like oil and gas, like tourism, like mines and minerals. I think we need hand-holding as far as mine minerals is concerned also. We are going through a very interesting time, as Hassan said already. We are bringing in industrialization. We're looking at science and technology. And while we were discussing this, the only point that came to my mind and the only missing link that I saw today was the absence of academia. Perhaps we should have invited 1 or 2 academians from Bishar University, UET also. And,
we had a last-minute regret.
Yeah. But so I think these dialogues will continue. I would also request Hina to you. Hina, to actually include us in the group. I would personally be interested in joining the corporate governance group of the clean energy, and as our institution, we are more than happy to have you in similar discussion. We would also request you to please send us the report of today's session so that we can share it with all the concerned participants and they can take their necessary directions from there. Thank you so much to you, Abid Saab, Waqar Saab, and SGPN.